There he lay, the fabled emperor of the forge, waiting for death to finally take him. He snorted at the thought. To think that he used to take pride in such outlandish names. The emperor of the forge, the sage of stone, the craftsman king, the lord of ores. How childish that all seemed now. For all the renown he had gathered from across the world, despite all the fortune and fame he had obtained, death could not be avoided. Soon, he would pass, and then his name would become but a fading memory. Perhaps through his crafts his name might live on as a legend, remaining in the world as a myth. Makrit sighed to himself as he stroked his long, braided white beard with his thick hands. He had regrets. One of them was how he had isolated himself from the rest of the world for the last 70 years. Now, at the ripe age of 731 years of age, no one was left to see him off into the next world. He cursed himself for his arrogant desire to be left alone. The old dwarf had no one at this point, and he knew he would die in his own lonely workshop, deep in the heart of the mountains, where no one would find him. He had managed to double the age of the average dwarf with the aid of magic and his own cultivation techniques. But at this point in time, he felt death's approach, and not even the strongest magic could stop it. His body, now withered away compared to the powerful body he had in his prime, still retained enough strength to tightly grip this last regret. On a simple silver chain around his neck hung a slightly fractured stone with a dull green shine. As always, it fit perfectly in the grip of his large fist, the smooth surface soothing him slightly. It was the heart of an ancient dungeon. Unlike all other dungeon cores, this one he had been unable to work in his forge. It would not bend to the will of his hammer, nor combine with even the finest metals. It was the one thing beyond even his fabled skills. He was starting to feel the chill slowly seep into his bones. Despite the thick fur blankets covering him, and the roaring fire near his bed, a cold sensation seemed to stealthily crawl into his flesh. He let out a great sigh, as he shed a single tear that slid slowly down his face, before reaching his proud beard. With his hand still gripping the stone, he began to hum a slow, sad tune. He infused all of his chi and magic into the sound that he created, knowing that death was at his side, waiting to take his soul into the eternal rest. What point was there in conserving his vast power now? His voice reverberated with a subtle energy that was difficult to describe. The old dwarven voice that was no more than a whisper resounded through the entirety of his workshop, escaping it, and reaching out far into the distance. Hundreds of miles away, people would say that they heard a beautiful yet haunting melody that whispered into their ears. They would say that the ancient voice of a mourning mountain god was heard that day. The haunting melody of an ancient being that, after around an hour, finally faded away, as if it was no more than a dream. The moment the soft hum of the song ended, Makrit's strong arm drew his last breath, and death consumed him. Or that's what should have happened. The moment Makrit sighed his last breath, and his soul began to depart his body, the dungeon heart around his neck began to glow. Unbeknownst to him, when he had released all his magic and chi infusing his voice with it, he had awakened the dungeon core. The core, although damaged, was not dead. It had been in a state of deep hibernation, resisting outside influences as it tried to regain some semblance of the strength it once had. When Makrit let his magic and chi flow from his body, without holding back, the dungeon heart had intuitively devoured most of his unrestrained energy, absorbing it like a sponge. The dungeon heart, despite consuming the energy, was still unstable. As the soul of the old dwarf left his body, the starved dungeon heart drew upon it instantly, trying to drink it in as another form of nourishment. As if defying the grip of death, the dungeon heart struggled to pull the soul of the dwarf into itself. Makrit was only a soul now, and he could feel the tug of two forces pulling at him. One force guided him towards what he understood was the vast space beyond, and the other into the now glowing stone clutched in the fist of his dead body. On a whim, he gathered and threw the entire weight of his soul towards the dungeon heart, sensing an escape from death. The struggle between the two forces lasted no longer than a minute, but for Makrit it felt like an eternity as he slowly crawled towards the dungeon heart. It was like trying to swim through mud,